I think it's fair to say that over the last decade, Sonic games rarely ever felt complete. Sure, they function just fine, but it's on a smaller scale than what we were previously accustomed to, and while Frontiers would bring back that sense of scale, stuff like Chronos just being Chronos again, leave it lacking the final touches to call it truly complete. Feels like the developer's vision had yet to be fully realized, but not here. Sonic Unleashed has always been one of my favorite Sonic games. It was one of the first games I got to experience through a Let's Play, as I played the Wii version and watched Kubaramani456 gush over the HD one. It was actually fairly recently that I got to play the HD Unleashed for the first time. But now that I have, there is no doubt in my mind that it remains to this day the most ambitious Sonic has ever been. Coming right off the heels of 06, Unleashed had to fix a franchise's reputation. And would I be rushing it if I said the opening cutscene alone succeeded? Marza Animation Planet managed to capture everything about Sonic with almost no dialogue. The sense of speed and expertness showed off by Sonic as he runs through an army of robots, excited that he's doing this again, taking the player along for the ride. It's incredible. That little smirk he does before he goes super just exudes confidence. He's done this before, and this time it's gonna be no different. Destroying the ship Eggman was just on and chasing him to the center of the fleet, for all he knows, he's won. And just as he thinks he's foiled Eggman's plans, the twist unfolds. He hasn't actually done anything. In fact, everything went according to Eggman's plan, as he traps him and uses the Chaos Emerald's energy to free Dark Gaia, transforming Sonic into the game's gimmick, the Werehog.
Ah, Sonic, that's a good look for you. Festive.
Before launching him into space, seemingly to his death. Wow. That one cutscene with about 3 sentences of dialogue stands as the greatest cutscene in the franchise history, and it's not even close. It almost feels like Marza were showing off in 2008. Shortly after, Sonic falls to Earth, and his fall is interrupted by Green Orb just for a bit before he falls again and meets Chip, a flying Chihuahua, I think, who's lost his memories. Sonic agrees to help him remember who he is, and we finally start playing the game. It's common knowledge at this point that Sonic Unleashed introduced the boost to 3D after having only been in the Rush duology prior, and they nailed it. I imagine this is what the 06 Smog Speed sections were meant to feel like had they been able to properly implement them. Never before have we controlled the Sonic this fast, and in a way, never since. While Generations had the faster Sonic, it lacks the effect this game has while boosting, making it feel slower in comparison. The point is, Sonic is a bullet here, yet still a controllable bullet thanks to a couple of new additions. Sonic has been given a drift, which admittedly has a weird learning curve to it, but is a great tool once you master it. The homing attack is back, this time with the relic introduced in Secret Rings a year prior, and a stomp to stop him dead in his tracks. This control scheme would set the standard for the next 16 years of Sonic now, and while they are more refined in later games, that doesn't mean that they're not fantastic here. They're the foundation that led to some of the best stages in the series, and it's a damn good one at that. Windmill Isle works well to introduce this new Sonic to the player, especially Act 2 as it's a much longer stage, allowing for more experimentation. It's also an amazing looking stage. If you spent any time in the Sonic fanbase, you've probably seen the opinion that Sonic Unleashed has the best graphics. It's not without merit, because quite frankly, Sonic Unleashed is beautiful. The game was made using the at the time brand new Hedgehog engine, and serves as a showcase of what it's capable of. For 2008, this was certainly capable. The new engine, as well as the game's art style going for a more Pixar look instead of the realism they previously attempted, made this game probably the last time Sonic truly felt like he was at the forefront of graphics, something which I'm sure would still be the case had it not been for Nintendo holding them back. The game leaves a very strong first impression, but after Windmill Isle Act 2, Sonic Unleashed's gimmick shows its face. Yeah, unfortunately this game would start the trend of Sonic having secondary gimmicks along with the boost. Think classic Sonic, the Wisps, and the Avatar. This game, our secondary playstyle is the Werehog, a slower platformer hack and slash akin to God of War if Kratos had stretchy arms and a sprint button. Unfortunately, and obviously, this didn't sit right with a lot of people, being one of the main points of contention among critics and fans alike when the game first released. But to be honest, I kind of like the Werehog. Now let me be clear, I like the fully leveled Werehog that can do this, but the Werehog the game starts you with does not do him any favors. He attacks really slowly and sluggishly. It's like how Secret Rings is a vastly better game with an upgraded Sonic, which I just realized is something Sonic teams just really like to do around that time. However, I still believe that the Werehog is a competent and fun spectacle fighter. I enjoy my time with the Werehog, exploring these detailed environments, listening to the atmospheric music that gets cut out way too often. hopping between platforms. I especially like this jump you can do off a ledge, it's so satisfying. And of course, the main course, the combat. Sonic Unleashed's combat is a mixed bag. You definitely can have fun with it. Heck, I had fun with it. The combos are a visual feast, but to do that, you first need to unlock them. Now in a game like God of War, to upgrade Kratos' health or magic meters, you need to find Gorgonite or Phoenix Feathers, with red orbs being reserved for upgrading your weapons and magic abilities. The way it works there is that when you spend the orbs to upgrade a weapon, its damage is increased and you unlock a new combo. This makes sense. Now let's see how Sonic Unleashed does it. As you play the stages, both Daytime Sonic and the Werehog collect Chaos Orbs, and this meter fills up. Collect enough orbs, and the number increases. At the end of a stage, or by pausing the game and going to skills, you can spend these orbs on upgrades for Sonic. Daytime Sonic has speed and ring capacity, which, yeah, makes sense. But when you see the next page, now I'm not gonna complain that the game has too many things to upgrade, but I will say that I'm not surprised that people find Werehog gameplay shallow. Real quick here, let's remove the shield tab because you're not upgrading the shield above all else. Let's focus on these four in particular. Now naturally, most players would gravitate towards health and strength. Unleashed, they'll probably only upgrade if they have some spare orbs, which leaves us with combat. The real meat of the game's combat lies as you unlock new moves for fighting and even some traversal options which make the Werehog way better to play, but obviously you can't have combos that deal the damage of a paper ball, so you need to upgrade strength. But oh, now you realize that that paper ball will actually kill you, so you should upgrade health. But now each upgrade costs 15 points and I can only pick one. What do I choose? Now the issue isn't that bad, not in the slightest. By the time the upgrades are that expensive, you still have a very capable Werehog, but just sucks that the Werehog was essentially shot at the foot just so the upgrade menu can say that it gives you a choice. I think the Wii version handles this much better, with all upgrades being on this field that's gradually filled with red orbs, giving a more well-rounded Werehog for people unable to get him to their preferred state in the HD version. But then again, the Werehog has way less combos overall, so I'm unsure how this could have been handled. Maybe I'm overplaying this and people that hate the Werehog hate him purely on a conceptual level, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Its levels are long on a first playthrough, not even I can defend that. It's only when you upgrade your Werehog further and replay these stages, you start to cut down on time and have more fun with his traversal. And while some of you might think that this is what Sonic has always been about, encouraging replayability and all that, in other games, you had all your important moves from the start. I just spent a lot of time criticizing him, but I have to reiterate, I love the Werehog. Even with all the problems I just mentioned, it's very hard to mess up a spectacle fighter, especially when your animations are as good as Unleashed, and I personally don't find them to be problems that negatively impact my playthroughs. This was more so to dissect why he was so hated on release. One thing I could do away with though is the emphasis on quicktime events. I get it, it was 2008, they were all the rage, but early on they can be utter pace breakers and the bell sound gets repetitive quick. Back to the story though, after beating Windmill Lilac 2, meet up with Tails, who decides that the best course of action is to find Professor Pickle and Spagonia and hopefully find a way to put the planet back together. There's a tornado stage here, one of two in the game where you press the buttons as they appear on screen. They're unnecessary, but they're short and don't hurt the game in any way. After reaching Spagonia, we discover that Professor Pickle has been kidnapped by Eggman and is being held in Missouri. So off we go to the second night stage. I like this stage. It's visually striking and has one of the few fun metal hunts in the game. Oh, we'll get there. Also, there's some trademark Zelda block pushing here, which, you know, boo. Savannah Said a Little Day though is where it's at. My first experience with the HD Unleashed day stages was through the Unleashed project for Generations, and this stage always stuck out to me. I have no idea why, maybe it's apart from the trailers or the fact that it isn't in the Wii version, so it was my first taste of more Sonic Unleashed. This stage is good at giving you a more proper taste of what's to come. Theming plays a pretty large role in why this stage works, as it gives the level designers some creative liberty in placing Sonic in scenarios, such as climbing up this giant tree. Sonic Unleashed is generally really good at this, but we'll come back to this point in a bit. We rescue Professor Pickle and he tells us that the only way to put the planet back together is by going to the 7 Gaia temples to restore power to the Chaos Emeralds. From there, the plot of the game takes a back seat as we go from continent to continent to do just that. But before I move on, let's talk about Sonic's characterization. This game was one of the last to have Jason Griffith as the voice of Sonic, and man does he do a stellar job. We've already seen the friend scene a million times, I don't have to explain why that one's good, but all around, Sonic is characterized wonderfully in this game. And it's not just Jason, it's easy to say that he's the best Sonic voice, though nostalgia is a factor and soon enough we'll start seeing people say the same I want Roger. No, the reason why Sonic is great here is because the writing and animation work with the voice. Watch this scene where Sonic flicks away Chip and talks to the Phoenix, or how defeated he looks when Amy doesn't recognize him. The writing also keeps Sonic at a more serious tone, not Forces or 06 serious, but he isn't anywhere near what the writers from Colors to Forces viewed him as. It's a healthy balance that allows the character to shine as a heroic yet free-spirited personality, which is something they later perfected in Black Knight. But in this game, they managed to perfect something else entirely. The entire reason I thought of making this video. The hub worlds. In Japan, this game is titled Sonic World Adventure, which is to say that exploring different parts of the world was deemed an important enough aspect of the game to put it in the title, and I have to admit, Unleashed wouldn't be half as fondly remembered as it is now if it wasn't for that premise. Much like how Majora's Mask's timer is integral to that game, Unleashed lives and dies by its setting, which bred so many creative ideas for levels in the game's art style. It would be indistinguishable without it. And part of what sells its illusion of a living, breathing world that functions whether or not Sonic's in it is the hub worlds. Between each stage, Sonic will explore a small part of the country he's in and interact with the locals. These are so detailed. You can admire the windmills of Apatos, the mountains of Chennai, and what's that there? What's that in the mountain? It's a subscribe button! The animals of Missouri, Spagonia's shops, and so much more. One of my favorite details is finding people travel from other countries as you fix the planet. Apparently Apatos has a serious lost father problem. And the music. I haven't really delved into the game's soundtrack yet, but all you need to know for now is that these hub worlds have what are unironically some of the best music, not just in Unleashed, but in the entire series. And they're hub worlds. I haven't even started talking about the main stages yet. Shamar Knight makes me forgive the main stage's stair trap, and trust me, that is high praise. Hopefully I'm getting my point across on how much I adore this game's subworlds, because they feel alive. These aren't Sonic locations, they're actual countries in the game's Earth, something I think is missing from later games. I consider one of Frontier's biggest missed opportunities, because for as much fun as they are to traverse, the Starfall Islands never felt truly inhabited. We barely saw remnants of an ancient civilization. We saw Sonic assets and obstacles on islands with potential for so much more. I believe this was a core component of Sonic up until Generations. Even a game like Secret Rings has its moments where it feels like Sonic is interacting with the world he's in, where it only makes sense for this to be happening right here. This naturally extends to the levels too, where the environments, level design, and soundtrack work together to create this thrill as well as this atmosphere. Let's take our next stage, Cool Edge, as an example. For one, our environment here is a snowy winter tundra, which naturally opens up opportunities for elements such as falling icicles and snow structures, running on water, and of course, the infamous bobsled. This environment then aids the level design, as we started out on a wide snowy expanse, the widest section in a day stage thus far, boosting through the igloos and robots, all the while avoiding spikes with the space we have, before we're given just a small glimpse of Sonic running on water. This will surely be important later, but for now we're transitioned into a 2D segment with a fast top path that can be taken with memorization of the stage, and a slower bottom path where a first time player is likely to end up. This section acts as a small breather before the game introduces us to ice physics, and we can clearly see that in his current state, Sonic is not cut out for traversing this way on ice, as he slips and slides all over the place. This is then followed by a door making use of the Stomp, the ability we just acquired in the hub world, presenting us with a solution to Sonic not being able to move on ice, the bobsled. It's also here where we have our first interaction with the whale, yet another set piece that's only allowed to exist in this level because of the environment and theming it's in, launching us to another 2D section where we get ourselves familiar with the bobsled in a controlled environment, where first, a dash pad launches us above spikes, then we have to manually jump over them, and finally are tested by jumping over bottomless pits. We leave the bobsled for now, boost through a cavern with falling icicles, and then oh would you look at that! The running on water from earlier returns, and the players act to maneuver their way onto platforms with dash pads to keep up his speed. If they miss the platforms, it's still possible to make your way to the end of the section at the cost of said speed. We then see the return of the whale, as he again launches Sonic using water from his blowhole and says goodbye. This is followed by another 2D section, this time longer and where it's harder to stay on the top path. In fact, it's impossible on your first run before you have the wall jump, and the level is bookended by yet another bobsled section, this time in 3D, a much less controlled environment. This all happens as you listen to this calm yet thrilling music, reinforcing the snow theme through its instrumentation, but also that this is now your third daytime stage, where we should start to feel comfortable with Sonic's control scheme by how it manages to remain calm when the beat should make it anything but. It's the fusion of these three elements that makes a Sonic Unleashed level what it is. Theming allowing for varied levels, level design with a mastery of teaching players new skills before testing them on him later, and the soundtrack that fits both the theming and how the player is feeling at this point like a glove. The night stages do this too, but if I tried to dissect one of those, we'd be here a while, and this is already shaping to be the longest video I've ever done. Coward! Alright, ignore him, let's talk about Dragon Road Act 1. The stage's environment is that of an Eastern Asian village during Chinese New Year, so that allows us to have a lot of platforming above water and these segments where we run on a New Year dragon. The stage starts off with a simple fight with some of the flying enemies, which are pretty easy to defeat. This leads to another fight where now flowers are added to the mix, and then all of that plus a few basic enemies to keep us on our toes. Can you see how the game builds up a natural difficulty curve, each encounter adding a new threat? Of course, the footage here has a max level Werehog, so I'm able to tear through them. Trust me on this, there is an escalation of difficulty with each encounter. This culminates in a fight with some advanced Dark Gaia creatures. The game then lays off the combat and instead tests the player on some platforming. Remember when I mentioned Gorgon Eyes and Phoenix Feathers in God of War? In those games, the upgrades incentivize the player to explore off the beaten path. And in essence, Unleashed does the same things but with Sun and Moon medals. We will get there. Look here, the safer paths with some wide platforms, or jumping on boxes floating over instant death water, rewarding us with a moon medal. We're then introduced to these poles that can catapult Sonic to faraway platforms, and immediately more depth is introduced because the next pole presents us with two options to move forward. If Sonic is just to take the catapult and fall, we deal with a fight against a wizard and basic platforming, but the more interesting path is to grab onto these enemies as Sonic falls and Spider-Man your way through to grab a Sun and Moon medal before grabbing the sledge, jumping on the dragon, dodge its fire to reach a moon medal, and skip a significant chunk of the level. After that comes the level's final combat challenge against a big mother and two wizards before you can reach the goal. But wait, there's a platform to the right. Performing this risky jumps here awards us with 2 more Sun and Moon medals, and then we can reach the goal. The music here encourages the player to take these risky paths and complements the level's platforming and setting perfectly. See? That wasn't hard. Alright, back to the coward. But the point still stands that Sonic's World Adventure allowed for some of the best stages in the series to be what they are, and it's only through all 3 aspects of a level working together that they can be this good. Generations may have perfected level design, making it my favorite Sonic game to play, but even I have to admit that Unleashed runs miles around it in its levels as a whole, making it my favorite Sonic game to experience, because that's what every level strives to be, an unforgettable experience. Skyscraper Scamper with its wall running and rail grinding, Rooftop Run Night with its clock tower climb, Jungle Joyride just being a thing, and that's something no Sonic game has been able to replicate since. But throughout all of it, there is one problem. These things. These horrible things. For those who don't know, Sun and Moon medals in the HD Unleashed are required collectibles to unlock stages, with Jungle Joyride requiring 60% of all the Sun medals in the game. You wanna know how much that is? 120. Now, in the night stages, collecting them isn't so bad. They act as rewards for exploration and difficult platforming challenges, but in the day stages, nothing is more of a pace breaker than stopping all your speed just to collect that one medal. On a second playthrough, this isn't so bad because you can play with them in mind, but on your first, you will be stopped by Arid Sands Night and Jungle Joyride Day, and I wouldn't blame you if you end up dropping the game because of them. You shouldn't, but I wouldn't blame you. There are even medals in boss fights. It's overdone to even that point. Speaking of the boss fights, oh, I'm the master of segues. The boss fights for Daytime Sonic are basically Sonic Advance 2 in 3D. Sonic runs at the boss with the ability to score a hit every once in a while. For their first boost boss fights, I think these do a pretty good job and use the boost in creative ways, such as being able to score extra hits on the Egg Beetle by boosting over him in his root animation, but these aren't really the most mechanically interesting fights. Sonic Generations Egg Dragoon is a much better fight in this style than what Unleashed is able to pull off, but it doesn't even compare to the Werehog's Egg Dragoon. The Werehog's fights are much better than the day ones, as they actually feel like fights. The Dark Moray and Dark Gaia Phoenix offer fun twists on the regular robot Sonic fights. They have fun attack patterns and mechanics. And then there's the Dark Guardian. I don't know what happened here, but whoever thought that block pushing the boss is a fun idea should not be a game developer. That's another win for the Wii version, as it makes the fight a brawl against the Giant Guardian instead of block pushing, which caught myself from earlier. Boo! The Egg Dragoon though, now that thing is awesome. So many elements combined to make this one of my favorite fights in the game. The setting starts out as a platform falls down a really long shaft in Eggman's base before it's destroyed, taking the fight to the Earth's core. Eggman really isn't messing around this time. You can even hear it in his voice lines. He wants Sonic dead.
Out of my sight!
But Sonic doesn't hold back as the Werehog, while dodging bullets, drills, ice attacks, and defeating robots between hits. The atmosphere is just incredible throughout the entire fight. It's deserving of its penultimate boss status. After such a good boss though, it's only natural to expect the final to be even better, right? No, I was trying to set up the whole thing that YouTubers do where it's actually worst, but Dark Gaia is actually a good fight. Well, like everything on Unleashed, and in all games really, Dark Gaia is more than just the gameplay of the fight. It's the climax of the game's story, the ultimate test of what you've learned in your adventure, the final impression the game gives you. And to be honest, they do a lot of things really well. That cutscene where Sonic loses the Werehog form and tells Shep to run still impresses me visually to this day. Same thing with the Supersonic transformation scene, providing a sense of scale to the battlefield you're fighting in. This works as a climax for about 2/3 of the fight. The Gaia Colossus has no reason to be as bad as it is. This thing is slow. The rocks Dark Gaia throws can be punched, but with this speed, good luck. He also throws them in a repeating pattern, something I'm sure had to be done so you can memorize it and move into position before they're thrown because of how abysmally slow turning is. I mean, look at this QuickTime event. Riveting. You do this 3 times. However, in between each time, there is a Sonic section where you have to make it to Dark Gaia's eyes before he takes down the Gaia Colossus. The timer for these is strict. It's a fun challenge and really tests your reaction time. The actual reason this fight makes a good finale though is because of its final phase. The orchestral rendition of Endless Possibility says it all. The tides have turned. You put the planet back together. You made the Chaos Emeralds powerful again. And now you will finish off Dark Gaia. Much like the adventure games before it, Unleashed ends with a spectacle. The phase can only be described as epic. It's very effective at giving you, the player, a sense of power. You feel Sonic's amazement when Chip enters the force field, as well as the urgency of destroying the snakes to join him, before ending on the infamous QuickTime event where you have to mash the X button 60 times. Before I played it, I always heard how good the HD Unleashed was, only then to see others say that the Werehog ruined the game for them. But in my mind, I have to agree with the former. This game is special. I'd go so far as to call it the last time Sonic was truly AAA until Shadow Generations. It's been 17 years since then, and up until Shadow Generations, Sonic Unleashed stood as the pinnacle of quality for the series. What that says about the franchise is up for you to decide. But for me, I will always adore this game. With that being said, have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.